Hey, I'm Karel, your host for Beyond the Toolbox, and today I'm with Jack, a PPC expert. So let's get straight into it, Jack. First, you are the owner of Industrious Marketing. You're doing that for the past 5 years. You're a PPC specialist, so that's definitely something we got to talk about because different intent levels, different budgets. So, could you just introduce Industrious Marketing? What do y'all do? What do y'all specialize in?
Sure. Yeah. So we specialize in Google Ads. Work with a lot of local businesses specifically. So home service businesses, even work with like some local, like restaurant type businesses or stores, things like that. Done work with those too. So mostly do Google Ads. Occasionally dabble in some paid social media that if we can tie it in a way that makes sense. But that's kind of where we specialize. So.
Okay, well, we gotta address the elephant in the room. CPCs are getting crazy. Like, what type of budget, team size? Who would you recommend to actually do PPC?
Sure. I mean, I'd recommend myself, right? I, it's definitely gotten. I think kind of the thing I talk about a lot, and I see others talk about this too, is it's gotten easier to do Google Ads, but it's gotten harder to do it really, really well. And that's part of that challenge is because it's gotten more expensive. So you can't run on like a couple $100 budget or something like that, which is something that people did in the past, and so it's much more. You need to have a healthy budget to succeed on Google Ads more, and that's definitely become a big challenge, especially for local businesses because they don't always have that, right? So I kind of the rule of thumb I'll give people is like you want to get at least 10 clicks a day, and that will give you a realistic uh, amount of traffic and conversion rate. So, so from there you can say like, hey, if you're a roofer and you're at $30 CPCs, which would be pretty normal in that industry, you need a $33,000 a month budget at least. And it can kind of vary from there, but that's probably the biggest thing I'd say is it's definitely more expensive and you need to have the budget to do it.
I feel like they also need a decent team too, right? For setting those appointments, closing them. I just want to make sure we set the expectations right because we've all worked with that person who's like, "Oh, your leads suck, but you're not calling the leads. You're not closing
Yeah.
them." So, would you recommend like a team size? Like, would you recommend at least one setter or one closer or something like that, or just anyone?
I mean, I'd recommend that you are able to handle the volume that comes from it. And so that, that can vary from person to person, but it absolutely is a huge deal. The faster that you get to the leads that are coming in and are able to book them or close them or do whatever it may be, the better you're going to be. And so if you aren't able to handle, an increased load in lead volume or you're responding days later or something like that, your Google ads are going to reflect that and you're not going to have success there either. And you may blame marketing or whatever it may be, but I preach that to clients all the time. Like what happens after somebody clicks on the ad is almost more important now than what happens before. And so that's a
100%.
huge piece. That's a huge piece of what we work with clients on, is, like, hey, what does the whole process look like? So, you probably want to have at least a setter or a lead salesman, something like that, that's able to handle the leads, make sure they're getting booked, respond to them quickly. If you're the owner and you're trying to do it and you're busy and you're running 30 different directions and you can't respond to those leads quickly enough, you might want to wait to run Google ads. So.
We can't have a podcast without talking about AI. So, like, is there some way you've been implementing AI into that lead, after the submission or after the booking to help them? Like, is there anything you've been messing around with AI for that?
Yeah, I've seen a variety of things coming, and I think it's only going to continue to change quickly at this point. But we're working with a roofing client right now that's working to integrate some AI systems into speed to lead is what they call it. So how quickly you respond to a lead, especially after hours. Like during the day, their sales team's quick to respond to leads and work with them. But if those leads come in after 5 o'clock or they come in over the weekend or something like that, you don't want them to sit there for 8, 12, 24 hours, 2 days if it comes in on like a Friday night or something like that. And so we're experimenting right now with bringing in like an AI tool that can respond to those leads and at least kind of keep them engaged until the sales team's ready to come in. And so that's a big one. I think that you have to find a balance between the human side of things and the AI side of things. I,
100%.
I've seen I've seen many cases where somebody went full AI with an answering machine or something like that, and the minute that the person on the phone realizes it's an AI talking to them, like their total their tone shifts, like they check out. And so I think that there's definitely a balance there. And it's the same on the ad side. Like we definitely use AI to help, you know, analyze data, figure out, ad copy, keywords, look at, what performance is. Like there's a ton of benefits there, but then you also need the human side of that. And, somebody that can step in and say like there's a reason we don't want to go after these sorts of things because it doesn't actually fit the business model right. Or, it's, this looks great on the Google Ads side, but it actually doesn't fit on the business side. And so there's a balance to strike in there. And I think that that's kind of the biggest thing that we're kind of trying to figure out now.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of horror stories, and everyone's selling the outbound or inbound AI appointment setter, but like I really don't think that AI is ever going to replace a salesman or read about anyone unless it's something like more data specific. Have you guys like experimented more with chatbots where you can't like really tell, or has it been like outbound agents?
More with like chatbots
Okay,
and stuff like that.
okay,
So it's harder to tell, obviously.
100%.
I have seen examples of like answering, like AI answering,
Yeah,
so it actually answers the call. I haven't seen any outbound stuff. I imagine that would be rough, but I mean, for a lot of our clients, we still see, especially in the home service space, like people want to get on the phone and call. Like, obviously form fills and appointments, booking appointments online is a thing that happens, but we still see a ton of people pick up the phone and call. And it's not just like 60+ year olds, right? Like it's all ages that they still want to call. They want to talk to somebody. They want to ask questions. There's still a major human side in all of that.
I've heard a little bit of pushback from like younger guys, just or younger everybody because they're more like a little bit socially anxious. They don't want to get on the phone. But like I've heard for right about everyone else, if they get on the phone, it's fine. But in terms of placements for Google Ads, if we could just shift gears back to that, have you experimented a little bit with YouTube? Like, have you seen much success with home service businesses on YouTube?
Yeah, we always are experimenting and checking out what's out there and trying different things. The bread and butter in the home service industry is search, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that is it's people are literally just telling you like I'm looking for this service right now. And so it's essentially like you need to be there to say like, hey, like we have the solution to your problem. So when you go into like YouTube or you go into like other channels, there's a little bit more of a you're trying to interrupt them and you're trying to say like, hey, like maybe you have this problem, or maybe you'll remember us down the road, or whatever it be maybe. And so you don't typically see the immediate results out of those the same way you would out of search. And so like I think that there's absolutely value in something like YouTube to increase demand, build awareness, get in front of people. That's absolutely a thing, but you have to consider how are you going to measure that and what are you going to determine success. You're never going to see a cost per lead come out of YouTube that's anything remotely similar to search, or any of the other channels on Google, whatever it may be. And so you have to kind of decide like, hey, what is the success metric here and how does it make sense? And then decide how that fits into your strategy.
100%. Of course, you have to look more at the lead quality. What's the close rate? What's the set rate? Whatever. Have you guys experimented at all with AI Max? This is a more of a selfish question. I haven't really experimented with AI Max. Like, have you guys seen good results from? Because I kind of find it hard to believe that the old grandma is looking on ChatGPT for a roofing contractor. But that's maybe just a limiting belief. Could you please break that for me?
We've experimented with it. We haven't seen much uplift out of it in the experiments we've done so far. It's, it probably would get you some additional volume in some ways. I've seen on the e-commerce side, I've seen it be way more beneficial because like there is actually a lot of times extra volume out there that you're trying to chase and get. But if you have a search campaign that's set up well and isn't limited in a lot of ways, you probably are catching most of the search share that's out there. Like AI Max isn't going to go find some weird keyword that people magically thought up in the roofing industry or the
Yeah.
HVAC industry or whatever it is, and and that's where, it's, and I think that could continue to shift. Like, there's obviously AI overviews and some of those things, and people are shifting how they're searching and looking for stuff, but we haven't seen much uplift yet. We'll continue to test it, but it's not a big piece of what we're doing right now.
Maybe I've got to run it maybe a little bit in the future because I don't know. I still have the limiting belief. I just don't see Grandma Sue asking Claude who's the best roofing contractor near them, but maybe it's just maybe it's a limiting belief. I got to see the numbers first.
Yeah. Yep. I haven't seen it yet, but things are changing fast. So
I guess. Yeah, that's true. I mean, have you guys? I was gonna say something. What have you seen any like best practices on PPC that you just totally reject? Like, just everyone's like, "Oh, you got to do this," but you're like, "I don't know. I don't know about that." Is there anything like that?
yeah. The local business world is totally different from a lot of the advice you'll see online. Like you'll see people say like if your budget's below 10 grand, you shouldn't even try to run ads. But that may not make sense if you're running in like a single state or a limited regional area. You'll see lots of advice out there. More and more, I've seen people, and this is true in some of what we've done, but people are going away from using negative keywords as much as we used to, and you'll see advice out there that says to get rid of those. But in a lot of local businesses or lead gen, those sorts of things still make a lot of sense. There's even cases that we have where smart bidding may not make sense for a business depending on what's going on with budgets and lead quality and those sorts of things, tracking ability, some of that kind of stuff. So I would say a lot of the advice you see online is good, but take it with a grain of salt when it comes to local businesses, home services, because it doesn't always apply one to one. A lot of the advice you'll see online is probably very e-commerce focused, because that's where that's a huge piece of Google Ads. So.
Well, is there anything that a contractor should kind of look out for before working with an agency? Like, because I know it's really rough in the home services to get someone to trust you just because they've been burned
Mhm.
so many times by like 10 agencies back to back. Is there anything you would say like, hey, if you're seeing this in an agency, like beware?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say one of the things, if you see any kind of guarantees, I would be extremely skeptical. I see it all the time. Like, they're going to guarantee 30 leads a month or whatever it is, or they guarantee certain costs or certain things like that. Usually, in order to do those sorts of things, there's some sort of like constraint on the back end. Like, maybe their lead quality is not going to be great, so they can guarantee, lots of leads. And then you're sitting there like, great, I have 30 leads, but they're all job seekers. Or they're limiting CPCs to keep costs down and make traffic look great, but then you're missing out on high quality things. So guarantees is a big one. Another one is account ownership. You should always own your Google Ads account, no matter what. Like
$100.
I don't have any scenario where I think that you shouldn't. So if an agency is going to own your Google Ads account, that should be a huge red flag. Because ultimately, if you decide to go a different way for whatever reason it is, they're not going to give you that account. They're going to take it. They're going to go away. All that money you spent, all the stuff you've learned working with them is gone. And that's, you paid for that. You paid for the data. You paid for all that. It should be yours to work with. So those are a couple of big ones. I see local businesses and home service companies work with a lot of like newspapers or radio stations, TV stations, those sorts of things. I can't blanketly say that those are bad, but I've seen plenty of bad come out of those. They're usually just like trying to like add those on to their existing ad sales or something like that. And so, the ones that I know of all outsource the actual work itself to some third party. That could be managing a ton of accounts, could have limited experience. You don't know like who they're outsourcing it to. So I'd always be careful, like, and ask questions about, who's actually managing the account. Are you just selling this to me and then handing it off to somebody and I'll never, know what's going on? So look for somebody that's actually going to be managing the account, or you can actually talk to the people on the account. And then look for somebody that wants to be a partner. Like that's, I think, a big piece of what we talk about too is I want to work with your business and I want to see your business be successful. So I'm going to tell you like, hey, I think your lead, the way that you guys are chasing leads after we generate them for you is a big problem. Like, and it's impacting Google Ads. Or here's some ways that I think that we could change your landing page to make things better. And those aren't things that I necessarily like charge for or like an upsell on my end. But I'm like, hey, like I think our Google Ads could be way better if we do these sorts of things and look at this sort of stuff. So you want somebody that's going to be a partner and work with you and is transparent and shares information.
So then, is there a couple questions they should maybe ask? Like, I know you said who's gonna be managing my account. Is there any like specific questions that someone should ask, like a bullet point list?
Sure. Yeah, you should ask about ask who's going to be managing your account, ask how ownership works with the account, who's going to own it. Um, Ask questions about reporting and things like that. Like what is their reporting like? What kind of information are they sharing with you? You know, if you own the account, you should be able to go in and see all the like data points. So if they're just sending you a PDF with numbers on it, it doesn't give you a lot. So you want somebody that's going to like share like strategic insights and those sorts of things. I would ask questions around like, how do you guys handle meetings? How do you work with people? Obviously, what's your billing structure? Like, how does that work? I straight up ask, are there any hidden fees? Are there any things that are going to mark up? Like, because there's that people get burned by that kind of stuff. They get locked into something, and then all of a sudden the agency's like, hey, you asked for 2 meetings a month. Well, that's actually $500 more a month to have 2 meetings versus the one we talked about. Like there's just crazy things. So those are probably some of the questions I'd look at.
That's a new one. I've never heard that one before. In terms of CPCs, they're high. Do you think that eventually they're going to start going down? Because I feel like the really large companies are very incentivized to run Google ads because they got to hire CTR. Google thinks that it's more relevant. No, it's not. They're just, insert huge company. Do you think like the CPCs are going to start going down, or do you think they're just going to always keep climbing for the back
I think
2026?
I think they'll always keep climbing, unless for some reason there's a ton of new inventory available out there. Ultimately, Google Ads, if you break it down really simply, is an auction. And so as long as you have people bidding against you, it's going to drive costs up over time. I think you see fluctuations. You see things go up and down. Like, we'll work with a client and we'll change things up. And, the next year our CPCs are 20% lower than the year before. But that doesn't mean that like overall CPCs are down. It just kind of depends on, how are you targeting things, what makes sense. So I think overall it'll continue to trend up. Depending on how patterns shift and how people change in their behavior, they may go up slower, or they may, not increase dramatically if Google's having to like control costs to make sure people are still using their services and stuff like that. But ultimately, Google's incentivized to continue to see things go up. And as long as more and more people are getting on Google Ads and trying to run accounts, and you're facing heavier competition, ultimately the costs are just going to continue to creep up.
It's unfortunate. It's definitely unfortunate. I mean, you just mentioned that if after you work with someone for, say, a year, the CPCs may go down. Do you know how long someone should try Google Ads before they end up saying, nah, this doesn't work for me, or this agency doesn't work for me? Like, how long should they try for?
Yeah, unless if there's obvious red flags, like you might want to bail earlier. But I always try to tell people like, hey, like 3 months. Let's give it 3 months.
100%.
And I think you'll see that from most people in my industry. And it probably sounds like on the client's end, it may sound like, hey, you just want to take us for 3 months and then, but we really do see a lot of times with businesses, like the first month might be kind of rough as we're trying to figure out what's working. How do we change things? Second month, things improve. Third month, hey, we've got this figured out. Our strategy's done. Like we've made the adjustments. Now we can scale and go. And so, month 3 plus, you see performance really start to improve and take off. So that's kind of my rule of thumb. It could take off from the first month. It may take 5 months. It varies. But if you're 3 months in and things aren't going in a direction that makes sense for you, there's probably a reason, and you might want to be looking around to find a reason. So.
I've seen it too. Like we've worked with clients, and it's like first month nothing, second month it's all right, and then it's just like a exponential equation to month 3, and then you have like all of your appointments, all your leads came in month 3, and then afterward. So it's yeah, I think 90 days is like the sweet spot. Now in terms of attribution, you mentioned that you've ran paid social and search. Like, do you have any software to like, or any recommendations for attribution tracking after? The buying cycle has gotten really crazy. Like I've seen the most qualified leads that I've seen will go from Meta to your website, or they'll call your website number or something else. So like, do you have any recommendations for attribution?
Yeah, it's that's obviously a tricky one, because you're right. Like people will see an ad on Facebook and then they go Google it, and so does Google get that credit or does Facebook get the credit?
Yeah.
But so I think it really depends. Like there's Northbeam, Triple Whale, are some of the ones out there that I know are heavily used, probably more in the e-commerce space. I know Google is trying to, they have something called Meridian now. It's like a mixed attribution model that they've put out. I haven't really experimented with it, but I think people are trying to continue to solve for it. It ultimately is probably going to depend on what makes sense. Most of them aren't cheap. And so like, does it make sense to pay for whatever the attribution software costs in order to say like, hey, look, we got this much better. So it's probably depends on kind of like how big is the business, how much are you spending to try to determine things, or are you just happy saying like, hey, we spent $5,000 and we got 50 more leads this month, hooray. There's some stuff in that, because you can just look at there's formulas and stuff out there too that you look at and say like, hey, like what's the cost per lead across all of our accounts or across all of our ad spend, or those sorts of things. So
And I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen a lot of people saying Google is sending you a bunch of bot traffic. If you go display network, you're going to get a ton of bots. Like, do you have any softwares for removing the bot traffic, or is it actually not that crazy as they say it is?
There is click fraud services out there. You'll see them a lot.
Really?
Yeah, yep. There's a variety of services that offer like click fraud software.
Okay.
Personally don't use it. Don't really know anybody that uses it. I think that Google is probably as good as anybody at identifying and removing bad traffic, especially from a click side, because it doesn't benefit them, right? If you're mad that all your traffic is junk and so you stop spending on ads, like they want their stuff to be good too. So especially from the search side, like I don't think that there's anything beneficial. Now on the display side of things, like there's bot traffic, there's bad websites. Even like search partners inside of Google search is kind of a secondary place that you can serve outside of Google's normal search network. There's issues inside of those. There's problems with poor website quality, poor traffic, things like that. To be honest, most of those I avoid. Like I don't run display for really any clients at all. I rarely, if ever, run search partners inside of search campaigns. So I just kind of avoid the areas that are problematic, and then there's no reason to pay for any kind of software to try to avoid those things. So.
Yeah, and I don't really know how they'd even check if it was bot traffic anyways. So I've just been curious about that, and I've heard a lot about that. Have you done much paid social, or are you mainly PPC?
I started in paid social years ago, over 10 years ago when I started. So,
We're in the best ages possible.
yeah, right. Yeah. So I've run it throughout the period. I've kind of specialized more in Google ads now and stuff, but I'll run it for clients. If they are, like, hey, like you're running our Google ads, we want to be on social. Will you help us out? Like I can do it that. And I don't really do standalone paid social or things like that. So, it's kind of just tied in with if I'm working on Google ads for people.
Why'd you stop? Is it the creative output?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I just got to where I liked Google ads better. And that was honestly, probably 6-7 years ago that I really stopped working on it as much. And I will say now at this point, yeah, like I'm the creative output and like what it takes to be successful on Facebook is much harder now than it used to be. And I'm not a designer. And so that's definitely a tricky part of social now. And, maybe someday if I had enough clients interested in it, we'd figure something out. But I'm going to stick mostly to Google.
I mean, you ran meta ads, I'm assuming, in 2016 when it was the best to run meta ads. So I have, it's changed a lot for sure. It's definitely very different. I mean, if someone wanted to connect with Industrious Marketing, wanted to book a call, like where could they find you? Where would it be best? Because I can also link your socials in the description.
Sure. Yeah, you can find my website. It's industriousmarketing.co.
I'll link
and
it.
So yeah, watch the end because .com gets people. You can find me on YouTube at Industrious Marketing, and you can find me on LinkedIn too. Harrison Jack Hepp is my name on there. I go by my middle name Jack, so that's how most people know me. But those are probably the best places to connect with me. I try to post on YouTube and share tips and thoughts and things like that, and same on LinkedIn. So those are probably the best places.